Wax on, wax off. Don't forget to breathe. Very important. Wax on. Quiet!
Cobra Kai is one of the greatest TV shows ever made. By all means, this show should not be as good as it is. So many of the performances are not great. The dialogue is very awkward at times. The choreography is sometimes so over the top that it would look weird in any other show. But that's the thing. Cobra Kai takes its flaws, embraces them, and turns them into strengths. Because it has heart, and it has soul. The Karate Kid is a timeless story of an underdog who, after getting bullied by some karate freaks, trains with an old hermit who teaches him how to not only fight for his own honor, but for the people he cares about too. The original Karate Kid is a classic that, along with its two sequels, tells the fulfilling story of Daniel LaRusso throughout his teenage years. However, I don't think many people would have predicted that these movies would inspire a spin-off sequel TV series that would all but surpass the original and become a modern classic. But they did, and Cobra Kai wasn't just a cheap cash grab that would speak to the nostalgia of old fans, but ultimately feel empty. No, it had a story to tell, and it wasn't going to back down until it had told that damn story. I don't even think many of the people who watch Cobra Kai necessarily had much of a relationship with the original movies. This show completely stands on its own 2 feet, and yet it never forgets where it came from. Cobra Kai is a love letter to the original Karate Kid movies, but it's also a love letter to people around the world who love great and exciting stories, action-packed and fast-paced dramas, and most importantly, awesomeness. Cobra Kai is a fantastic show that embraces its flaws, fine-tunes its strengths, and has produced a series that's unlike any other series out there. Trust me, I've been trying to find alternatives and I've always come up short. But why is this? Why is Cobra Kai so great? So I think we need to start off by discussing the justification of this show, why this sequel needed or even deserved to be made. And despite the trilogy feeling complete, it still left the stories of a lot of the characters open to further development, such as Kreese, Silver, Chosen, Mike Barnes, Daniel LaRusso himself, and of course, Johnny Lawrence. Deciding to focus on Johnny for the sequel to The Karate Kid was an incredibly smart choice because not only is Johnny such an interesting character with a lot of potential, he's also a guy who has hit rock bottom. Compare him to Daniel, who's rich, successful, and popular. Johnny is struggling financially, isn't really good at anything useful, and he's a nobody. He's haunted by losing to Daniel, and because he can't let go of his anger, his jealousy, and his spite towards Daniel, he comes off as bitter and pathetic. However, it's not as simple as that, because then he shows that he's still a fucking badass. And suddenly we have a character that we wouldn't mind seeing turn his life around and develop. But there's also the fact that we just overall enjoy seeing the antagonist become the protagonist. And that right off the bat is a good place to start when making a compelling story. But then add in a natural rival in Daniel, who will react to this rise of Johnny with his own complexions and story left untold. And this dynamic ends up being the soul of the story, a dyad of opposites who we want to see overcome their petty squabbles, which is a goal that seems to always be just outside their reach. It keeps us hooked, it keeps us invested in the story. But then add in more of these legacy characters to further push both Johnny and Daniel, such as Kreese, Chosen, and Silver, and this show became destined for greatness. However, just creating a sequel with these older characters wouldn't have made this show what it is. If Johnny and Daniel are the soul of Cobra Kai, then the younger generation is the life of the story. The intertwining of the older generation with this younger generation of characters adds a level of depth and excitement to the story. In between the love story that is Daniel and Johnny, we become invested in all of these characters, be it Miguel, Robbie, Sam, Hawks, Dimitri, Tori, Kenny, and even Kyler. Alright, maybe not him. But the show is so good at making complex characters that we care about. I know a lot of the older audience doesn't really care for high school drama, but this show does it in a way that gets us invested. We don't mind that much, it's even pretty awesome at times, because that's where karate comes in. The ever-looming threat of fights breaking out and that the conflicts can be resolved with karate, rather than typical teen show plot devices, keeps us on our toes. Don't get me wrong, there is absolutely still a lot of typical teen drama, and while I think it's done very well, it naturally won't be for everyone. However, the aspect of karate gives this show the intrigue that you almost can't find anywhere else. We don't just end up caring about these characters as people, we also care about them as fighters. We love the training arcs, we love the fights, we love to see who's on Cobra Kai's side and who's on Miyagi's side, and sometimes even a third side. It's the relationships and conflicts between the characters that gets us invested, but it's the karate that seals the deal. And for people who like badass shows, there is arguably nothing better than Cobra Kai. However, a good cast and a great concept can only take you so far. The show still needed to be good, and Cobra Kai absolutely delivered. I want to take a step back to the beginning of this video when I mentioned some of Cobra Kai's weaknesses, which aren't as much weaknesses as they are things that could have been weaknesses in any other show. But because Cobra Kai is so damn good, these potential weaknesses become strengths instead. For example, the dialogue. If you isolate some of the conversations, they can be really corny. The dialogue in this show sometimes sounds like it's from a stage play in high school, or a fan film. Like you'll have a kid walking in the school halls, and one of the Cobra Kai bullies comes over and says, "What you looking at, scrub?" Then the bully looks at his other bully friends, licks his lip, and does that little fuckboy laugh thingy. Then they beat up the kid. Or it'll be a situation where Silver has just put an ad on TV, and then Daniel talks to all of his students and says that this could be the end of life as we know it. If Silver goes global, he'll teach his dangerous style of karate to kids around the world, and then no kid will feel safe ever again. We must save the world. Obviously, I'm over-exaggerating with these examples, but the dialogue really is awkward at times. However, we don't care. Once you get into the groove of this show, you start to embrace the silliness because it's done on purpose. The writers haven't attempted to write Game of Thrones level of dialogue. No, because they know that the goofiness of this show adds to the charm. However, one thing I must say is that this show works so well as a binge show, and I don't know if it would work nearly as well as a weekly show. Every new season I have to adapt back into the style of Cobra Kai, and having to do that week in and week out would probably take me out of the immersion than when I binge it. However, this is of course a minor complaint. Another point of contention is the acting, which especially in the earlier seasons is not great. Some actors I think do a really good job, such as William Zabka, and other performances I think were a bit off, such as Ralph Macchio and Tanner Buchanan. However, they both really grew into the roles. Well, Ralph Macchio grew back into it, and Tanner really just is awkward even in real life.
I want to wear a dress. Can I wear the dress?
But the weird instances of weird acting in the show really just don't matter, because again, we're so invested. We're so enthralled by the pure hype this show produces, so this again isn't really a problem, because mediocre acting doesn't ruin a great show. The choreography was something I also mentioned, but again, any flaws in it just adds to the charm. This show is imperfect and that adds to its perfection. The fights are generally so entertaining, but not just because of the way they're filmed, which is great, but also because of the characters and conflicts. It's almost as if this show has power levels and rankings. I mean, people on YouTube love making power scales for the characters, and it really adds to the enjoyment because we love seeing characters get pitted against one another to see who the top dogs are. Again, the karate adds such an interesting level of nuance that makes conflicts even more enjoyable. However, this show is also just technically solid. The writing and directing works really well. The pacing is incredibly fast, and it allows for there to be a lot of drama in every episode. And I think there are some scenes where it just feels like the creators were inspired, and I love that. And everything from the sound design to the practical effects to the soundtrack, it just blends together wonderfully. It's incredible that they've managed to keep up this same level of quality for 5 seasons. And since season 5 just came out, I want to quickly say that this season felt more mature than the previous ones. It felt like the stakes were higher, that the characters are finally beginning to reach the place where they need to be. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's better than the other seasons, but it just had a little bit of a different feel to it. And I'm so excited for season 6 and all the drama and conflict that it'll bring. A lot of the character relationships are quite stable at the moment, and I'm both ready and not ready to stir the pot once more. But despite all the good things that I've talked about with regards to Cobra Kai, the reason it truly is a masterpiece is because it embraces the insanity. And this is the heart of Cobra Kai. This show is goofy, it's corny, it's over the top, but in the best way possible. It's a show that really shouldn't work, but somehow it does. And any flaws it may have don't really take anything away from it. I guess the main negative one could find with Cobra Kai is that it's definitely not for everyone. Not every person will enjoy this show, and that's sad because they're missing out. But since this show isn't built on the foundations of brilliant writing and directing such as shows like Breaking Bad, which is very universally loved, Cobra Kai focuses more on the vibe and its own uniqueness. So naturally it won't be everyone's cup of tea. And that's okay. Cobra Kai is a show that has no business being as good as it is. It has so many components that all need to be working together in unison, otherwise it would fall apart. But luckily they do. However, Cobra Kai ultimately succeeds because it embraces the insanity, it doubles up on the badassery, and it never strays away from its heart and soul. Cobra Kai stays true to its nature, it never wavers, and thus we're left with pure awesomeness. Hey guys, if you enjoyed this video then please do leave a like and subscribe, it would greatly help the channel, and it would tell me if I should keep doing videos like these. If you want to further support the channel, you can always check out my Patreon for some really cool benefits, such as me shouting you out like Ben Joseph here. But other than that, I hope you all have a wonderful day, stay safe and peace out.